hip hop soul in the crowd. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back in. It is the Rob Stu Show, and we're excited about this show today, folks, here on the Pulse Sports Network on YouTube. Like, subscribe, get the clicks up. Today, we're doing our bread and butter. Bread and butter, Rob. This is what we live and die for, what we breathe for. We're finally talking college football season. Phil Stillbook is coming out soon. He'll be joining the show soon. We'll be going over Mountain West futures. I can't wait. But you got to start it off strong. We're starting it off strong today. We got our friend, you know him, you love him. You've seen him on Paul Feinbaum. He's killing it. He's taken over the college football media world. He is our good friend, SEC Mike Bratton of That SEC Podcast. Mike, it is so good of you to join us. You're on the road. You're doing big things. You're probably on the recruiting trail for Clark Lee. How's things?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you having me on. And with that intro, I thought you had someone else on because I don't think you were talking about me with all those kind words, but I do appreciate it.
Man, you've been really great to this podcast. You've been on multiple times in the past, chatting it up with me. And now for the first time on the Rob Stu Show. So appreciate you. Before we even start talking, because I know Rob's itching to get into the SEC West. He hates Alabama, shockingly. A lot of really just guttural, visceral hate. Before we get into that, can you please let the people know where can they get that SEC podcast? Because last time you were on, you had just introduced the studio. The production value is through the roof. It's a beautiful setup you got in studio. It's a really great show with cousin Shane, noted Tennessee volunteer. Slappy, love him though. Where can people see the show, hear the show, get the show?
Yeah, appreciate that, Stu. So it's just That SEC Podcast, where you could search that on Google, and it'll pop up available on every podcasting platform, YouTube. We're the highest rated SEC show out there. So search SEC Mike, and you'll be bombarded with my ugly face if that's something that interests you.
That 5-star review will get you a koozie, though. That's a big time. That's big time, brother.
Well, we're always trying to do stuff for the fans, man, because without them, there is no show. And that's all I try to do, man, is just what are the big time shows not doing and what they're not doing. That's what I'm willing to do, because if that's how you grow your audience, and that's how you make a run at this thing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, brother. You're killing it. And I hate to do it to you, but noted Brian Kelly enthusiast, Roberto, I'll let you lead off. SEC West, let's talk about the most exciting division in all of college football while we have it. Roberto, I'll let you lead off.
Yeah, listen, Mike, welcome to the show. Stu already gave you, the intro and everything, so we'll get right into it here. LSU, I tell you, coming in last year, I'm a Brian fan. I saw the job he did there. Obviously, the job at Notre Dame. I was kind of blown away a little bit about how well he did at LSU in that first season. I didn't think it was going to go that good. I'm not in love with the quarterback, neither is Stu. But listen, he comes in now with this season with the 6th-ranked recruiting class. He's got a couple of standout transfers. This LSU team, I'm not going to put them at the top of the SEC, obviously, but I mean, this guy's got a real chance here to turn this team around, and he already has. But to go up against the Georgias and the Alabamas, he's going to have to improve even more. What's your feelings on LSU coming into this season?
Yeah, well, we recently on my show, we did some bold predictions for the East and the West, and my bold prediction for the West is LSU wins the national championship. So, I mean, I guess that says it better than anything else I could say. But year two, Brian Kelly, LSU's one of only two SEC teams that return the starting quarterback and the offensive coordinators. Massive coaching turnover in the SEC this offseason. So I think that'll help. I've always been a big fan of Matt House, the defensive coordinator. He was defensive coordinator up at Kentucky the first time they won 10 games. Then he went on to the NFL. And, his defense, I think it's fair to say they underperformed last season, but bringing a lot back. They've added, I think I just counted this up today, 12 defensive transfers. They've added a lot of other guys as well. But Mason Smith back on the defensive line, that's huge. Harold Perkins, I think he might be the best defensive player in all of college football. And they added Omar Spates, a guy out of the Pac-12. He was all Pac-12 team captain for Oregon State, which won 10 games last year. Plug him in next to Harold Perkins. They got the star power. I'm not 100% sure that they've got, the depth and overall talent on both lines of scrimmage that you'd want for a national champion. So that is a bold take, no doubt. But bringing back all five on the offensive line, that unit was a weakness entering year one. I mean, it was a travesty if you think back to the opener against Florida State. But by the end of the year, that was a strength. And again, they're bringing all those guys back. So I think LSU is going to be really good on offense. And if those stars shine through on the defensive side of the ball, there's no reason they don't win the West again, in my opinion.
Yeah, Mason Smith is an absolute freak in the middle. You know what? I think, too, with Brian Kelly, I think what made him sick at the end of last season, the way Devin Achey, just absolutely ate him up for Mississippi State in that game. That was a bad loss for them on the road. I know they had already clinched.
You mean A&M?
Yeah, Texas A&M. I'm sorry. The way they got exposed in that game with their defensive line, go back to that game. They absolutely got run over. It's funny. One thing Brian Kelly always passed along, even to a couple of Rutgers coaches that I know, was, when you play in these big boy divisions, the Big Ten, the SEC, it's all your lines. Your lines have to dominate. You have to have big offensive line, big defensive line. And I think he's seen that this year with the players he's went and got. That's pretty bold national championship, but they're definitely going to be really good.
Yeah, Mike, I'll
definitely.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I mean, you got LSU winning the Natty. I'm assuming that means LSU's winning the West in your mind. There's a team, upstart team. They found a couple of years of success in Tuscaloosa. Really, I guess it's all going to break down to who the quarterback is. I mean, this is a Tide team that, historically, you look at their past few recruiting classes are some of the highest ranked of all time. They have talent on the team. They've changed up coordinators. We've got rid of Pete Golding. I know Alabama fans are really scared about that for sure. What are your thoughts on Bama? Where's the positives? Where's the negatives for you?
I mean, the defense, I think, should be a positive. Like you said, Pete Golding gone, Kevin Steele in, but I think it's laughable, all these Alabama fans that think Pete Golding was a problem, when we all know it's Nick Saban's defense, it's Nick Saban's program, and he's making all the decisions. So to just throw that at Pete Golding, I think, is idiotic. I've been saying for a long time, I think Alabama's lost their edge. They lost their toughness. Teams don't fear them. Jalen Hyatt scored 5 touchdowns against them last year in a single game. I mean, back in the day, that's what you scored in a season on Alabama. Yet, I don't know. I mean, it's just been year after year. The fear of Alabama is gone. And yeah, you're right. They got a lot of talent. They've also had a lot of transfers out, and they've had a lot of transfers in to shore up deficiencies all over that roster. So, the development is not there. Identifying talent is not on the level it has been. I think Nick Saban has lost a step. He's still the greatest of all time. I'm not trying to besmirch his golden name, but he's just not as good as he once was. I mean, hell, he was in Italy for 10 plus days while Kirby Smart was landing the number one overall recruit in the country. That's what it takes. You cannot be taking all this time off. And if he wants to take time off, he should just walk away from the game, in my opinion. So I think that's more of the same. I mean, I would be less shocked if Alabama finished third in the West than I would be them winning the SEC West. So, I mean, I think Texas A&M is nipping at their heels. And a lot of that has to do with them hiring Bobby Petrino, because I don't have a ton of faith in Jimbo Fisher either.
Oh, well, we've seen the Jimbo Fisher offensive experience. It's not the world's greatest.
Now, who's going to pay for the drywall in Bobcat's apartment? Because he just punched a few holes through the wall.
Well, Mike, you may receive a death threat. We'll talk to you offline. We'll navigate through it. There's going to be somebody that's very angry about that. But you did bring up Texas A&M last year. Obviously, just not great, not great, Bob. In terms of how they performed, do you think it's
somebody on this podcast might have had a future ticket on Texas A&M last year?
You would hate to see that.
Somebody in New Jersey on a construction site, might have made a few bets on Texas A&M.
God bless them. Hence why they're on the construction site. But I tell you, Mike, it really felt like last year, and shout out to a New Jersey legend, Mike Elko. It really felt like Texas A&M was missing him as a coordinator. It felt like Jimbo was trying to make square pegs fit in round holes. You said that they have a ton of room to improve. Are you buying the Wegman hype?
No, I mean, I don't buy anything with A&M after a decade of hyping up the Aggies. So could they win the West? Yes, with all the talent they have. Could they finish dead last again? Yes. So, I mean, anything in between is not going to surprise me. So, I mean, I think Connor Wigman is a good player. We saw him at the tail end of last year, and heck, they beat LSU. That was, their best performance of the season, I would argue. But they lost to Ole Miss too in that same tail end of the season. So the thing that I really like A&M is their defensive line. I mean, they've got about 8 or 9 guys that could probably start for just about anybody in the country. So they're going to keep them fresh. They're going to get a lot of penetration. They should be able to stuff the run, something they could not do to save their life last season. All these guys, they couldn't stop the run for some reason. They're thin at linebacker. They're thin at corner. They did add transfers at both positions, so we'll see how how they boost that defense. But DJ Durkin, I mean, he did a pretty good job at Ole Miss. He did not do a good job, as you alluded to, with Mike Elko going on to become Duke head coach. He had a hell of a year, so maybe it was more Mike Elko doing the thing than Jimbo Fisher. We'll see, but I just think Fisher giving up play calling, getting in Bobby Petrino, I think that could be a stroke of genius there that somehow Jimbo stumbled upon making a wise decision.
Well, I think we captured the West. We're going to deep dive Mississippi State, Auburn, War Eagle. We'll get into it, but we got to switch over to the SEC East here, as it's really a 2-horse race. Feels like. And the ultimate question here is Tennessee good enough? I know your broadcast partner thinks this is not even a question, but is Tennessee going to eclipse Georgia? Is this the year we get new blood out of the SEC into the college football playoff?
Well, really, the main question too is Joe Milton.
Yeah, that's Joe Milton. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't bet on it, to be honest with you. But, I don't think it's a slam dunk that Georgia wins the East and is going to win a 3rd championship in a row like some people do. I mean, remember this time last year it was a slam dunk that Alabama was going to win it. So, I mean, these narratives change in a hurry. I'm not a huge Joe Milton fan. I am a huge Josh Heupel fan, though. So I think he can get the most out of them. What does that mean, though? He's not Hendon Hooker, I'll tell you that. So I mean, I would not be stunned if Nico's your starting quarterback by the end of the season. I'm not ready to go quite that far, though, because Joe Milton is a fifth-year player, and he's been in this system for 3 years now. So he should have, he has essentially lapped the field when it comes to that quarterback competition. But again, I'm saying towards the tail end of the season, we'll see. But no, I think and Georgia certainly has got some deficiencies that people just gloss over, but lost both offensive tackles, both draft picks. Jalen Carter was a game wrecker. And as much as people want to sit here and say that Georgia dominated Tennessee, I mean, they won handily. That game was never in doubt. But it really came down to about a handful of deep shots that Tennessee missed. And the key to the game, the whole thing, was Jalen Carter was just unblockable for that Tennessee offensive line. They had no answer for him, and hardly anybody did the last 2 seasons. And that's why Georgia was so damn good. And last time I checked, Jalen Carter's in the NFL, and as good and as talented as Georgia is, they do not have another interior defensive line. They don't even have any defensive lineman that is near his caliber of Jalen Carter. So I think that is a question mark. I like the Mike Bobo hire. A lot of people like to criticize it, but I think Mike Bobo is a good offensive coordinator. The only issue I would potentially have, Mike Bobo, Will Muschamp, Kirby Smart, they're all buddies. They're best friends. They played together. I'm curious how that dynamic shakes out. And not to say that Kirby's too close to those guys and won't make the right decision, but what will happen when adversity strikes? I was talking with someone today about Georgia, and their biggest challenge may just be complacency and a schedule where I've been told they're going to be at least a 17-point favorite in every single ball game, aside from the Tennessee game. How do you get up for a schedule like that? If you have one slip up, if you're the Georgia Bulldogs, I don't think you're getting into the playoff, because everyone's going to say, well, hell, they didn't earn it. They didn't play anybody, and they lost one game, whether that be Tennessee, Auburn, Kentucky, Missouri, what have you. I mean, I'm reaching here for games they could possibly get upset in, but if they do not run the table, I think they're going to get left out because their schedule is so weak.
I tell you, Mike, I'd like to get your thoughts here on an outside. This is a gambling show. And I'm taking a chance with this team. I know it's early on. Okay, I'm a Spencer Rattler fan. I know Stu hates him. A lot of other people aren't fans of him. I really like the way this South Carolina team finished the year last year. I'm a Beamer fan. I thought he was really starting to put it together. I like this team heading into the season. I think they have an outside chance. But obviously, is anybody going to knock off Georgia? Probably not. But I kind of like the way this team is headed.
Yeah, I'm not there with you. I mean, I am a big fan of Beamer. I think Spencer Rattler, when he's on, he's on. If he plays like he did against Tennessee last year, yeah, they'll beat everybody they face. But the problem is we have seen him for 3 college football seasons now, and he's just not that guy, at least not consistently. So are we going to gamble on that with a new offensive coordinator that he's just going to, everything's going to, the flip is going to switch, so to speak? I'm not. And the SEC is a line of scrimmage league. In South Carolina, it's a nice story, flashy. There's things to like about the future, but they are the weakest on both lines of scrimmage. You just cannot manage that. You can't work around that. Not in the SEC. I'd be selling stock on South Carolina right now.
And how about this? Sorry, Stu, I just want to throw in another question. How about this quarterback situation at Florida? This is Napier's second year here now. Obviously they lose Richardson to the NFL, which was, kind of surprising as early as he went. My thoughts. I don't know about your thoughts, but what do you think of this Florida quarterback situation?
I mean, that's the best they could do, I guess. Graham Mertz. I mean, Billy Napier said that was our top guy, even though he went for about 8 other transfer quarterbacks and couldn't get any of them, including guys that have never started the game, a single game in the SEC, and are backups right now. Clearly,
Peyton Thorne's a better quarterback than Graham Mertz.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I mean, this is not great. 4 or 5 offensive linemen off the team from last year. They were running game is where Napier's bread and butter is. Can they? Now I hear they like the guys they brought in, but everybody likes the guys they brought in. You know what I mean? Across the country, the offensive line is not something you just plug in, and guys are just awesome. That's a position unlike any other. It's a developmental position. Chemistry needs to be worked on. I think that's going to be a real issue. They hired a defensive coordinator that I don't think he's old enough to shave yet. So I don't know. I mean, and they have, by many accounts, the toughest schedule in the country. Man, I don't know. It's maybe another rough year, or maybe Billy Napier is, maybe we're all underrating him and the job he's doing, because he is doing a good job recruiting. But how many of those guys could come in immediately and play in the SEC? I don't like their odds.
So we're talking odds. Is there a dark horse candidate? We saw LSU pull it off last year. Is there a dark horse candidate you think in the West or the East that either is the win total is way too low, or could potentially make that magical run? Granted, you got LSU, Tennessee, Georgia. That's a hard mountain to eclipse from what you've kind of talked about. But is there something out there you're looking at with that glancing eye?
Yeah, I was talking about LSU being my bold pick out of the West. Well, I got one out of the East, and that is Kentucky winning 10 games this year. I think everybody is underselling Kentucky right now. That's the team I got my eye on now. The schedule's not doing them any favors. They have to go to Athens, and they catch Alabama out of the West this year. So, I think it's very unlikely that they would, even in a dream scenario, win the East. But I think they can win 9 in the regular season, win a bowl game, get to 10. It would be the 3rd time in 6 years. So it's not that crazy to suggest. And I think they've upgraded at quarterback with Devin Leary and Liam Cohen. I don't think he gets enough credit for what he did to that Kentucky offense, and he's now back after 1 year with the LA Rams. So I really like Kentucky. I think most people are sleeping on them.
NFL question here then for you, because you said something interesting there. I agree with you. Devin Leary is a massive upgrade over Will Levis in my mind. Will Levis is a summer 7-on-7 t-shirt shorts guy. He looks amazing. He'll eat a banana hole, but when you put pads on and put a defense in front of him, it's a different story. Him or Richardson, to you, which one for future? And I know NFL is not necessarily your game, but you've seen these guys more than enough. Which one you think transitions to the NFL better?
Can I say neither?
Yeah, you could say neither, because I agree with you.
No, I mean, if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Richardson. I think he's the ultimate boomer bust. I mean, I think he's going to be an all-pro, or he's going to be like out of the league in 3 years. I mean, I don't know if there's going to be an in-between with him. I think he's so young. I think he's only 20 years old. And at times, I mean, phenomenal. At times, he didn't look like he should be starting quarterback in the SEC. So, I don't know. I think, it probably would have benefited him. I know Florida probably made the right decision letting go of Dan Mullen for a lot of reasons. I think Dan Mullen's a great coach and a great quarterback developer, but I would have loved to see Anthony Richardson another year under Dan Mullen, but unfortunately we didn't get that. So hopefully he gets the coaching up there in Indianapolis, because I think he needs to take a redshirt year. I don't think he's going to come in there and do much his first year. I could be wrong, but yeah. And Will Levis, I never saw it with him. So I don't think he's much of a player at all.
Well, Richardson's probably 2 years away from being a year away, right?
Exactly.
Roberto, I'll let you, I know you got one last one as we wind it down here.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, just I really wanted to get, you're so in touch with the SEC, you know everything about it. What are your real thoughts here on this NIL and the way this is going? Do you think the NCAA will be able to make rules to this? You hear a lot of coaches saying it's basically unfair, but what isn't in this world? What are your thoughts on the NIL and just the way college football is going in general, with basically 3 or 4 teams that have a logistic chance to win it every year and the rest just playing for bowl games and, Saturdays in the fall tailgate?
Yeah, well, when it comes to NIL, I mean, I love it. And the fact that Nick Saban, Kirby Smart hate it, that tells me it's a great thing, because they were buying players before it was legal, and they just didn't want the playing field to be even. And now that it's even, now they're upset. So, and look, I mean, Alabama got upset. Nick Saban went on his tirade because they finished number 2 in recruiting. Then they turn around, they got the number 1 class. So what does that tell you? They reinvested in NIL. So there's so much money going on. I'll tell you, I think I was like in middle school or something. I was pretty young when I found out, and I mean, I guess it was like public knowledge at the time, but the NCAA tournament, we all enjoy watching it, right? Well, they get paid, and this was like 20 years ago, whatever, $1 billion per year just to televise that thing. And we're sitting here 20 years later saying, oh my God, can you believe, the star quarterback at Alabama makes $1 million? Well, hell yeah. I mean, Tim Tebow was probably worth 10 million and he didn't get it. You know what I mean? So it's a joke to me, all these coaches making all this money and they're bitching and complaining and all this. It's a joke. If a player's worth something and someone wants to give him money, I got no problem with it. I just think I think it's silly, and there's not going to be any rules, because then they're leaving it up to the government. I mean, the government's got better things to do than to figure out, NIL laws that are across the country. And I realize it's a headache for these coaches, but again, they're making. I mean, Eli Drinkwitz makes $6 million a year. You think I care that he's got to have a headache over NIL? I do not care one bit. So, I mean, if it's that big of a deal, high school coaching is available to all these guys, and I'm fine with them going down that road if they're really that upset.
As long as I get my damn NCAA football game. I mean, me and Rob already got a plan. We're taking New Mexico State to the promised land, transfer portal. We're divorcing our wives, by the way. We're going to just rent. We got a little poolside cabana set up. It's going to be, yeah. I mean, you have to be focused on recruiting, transfer portal, playing big games against FIU. I mean, you know the drill, Mike. We got extra space if you want to join us.
Oh yeah, count me in, man.
All right, beautiful. Hey, we're gonna have more on New Mexico State NCAA
give us a
24.
Little, Nick Saban. Give us a little Nick Saban on the way out.
In my program, I don't like Mill. Yeah, there's a little Nick for you. And Bobcat's gonna send us a death threat.
Oh yeah.
On that happy note, folks, that SEC podcast. SEC Mike Bratton, he's doing the Lord's work. Once again, Mike, where can people find you and reach out to you on the Twitter sphere?
Yeah, I appreciate the plug. Just search SEC Mike or that SEC podcast, and that's probably the best way to find me. Available on all podcast platforms.
Also on the YouTubes. Don't forget the YouTubes. You guys are doing some great stuff on there. Check them out. Check us out next week. We got the Belmont horses running around in circles in New York. Who has got it better? Hopefully we'll win some money this weekend and have a bankroll for you next week. But until then, for Roberto, for SEC Mike, take care, brush your hair, and we'll see you after a while.